I hadn't seen my ex-wife in 4 months, and I swear the universe picked the one morning I finally tried to touch grass, like my therapist kept nagging me about. I'm walking along the Riverwalk in downtown Portland, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, pretending I don't know the stock market opens whether I'm spiritual or not. And then I see her. Not a maybe. Not a look-alike. Lila Harper, the woman who used to know exactly how I take my eggs and exactly how to turn my silence into a fight. Sitting on a bench like it's just another Tuesday, cardigan open, hands wrapped around a cup of tea like she's guarding warmth. And right there, under the soft knit, is a baby bump that doesn't leave room for, could be bloating. My brain does what it always does, it starts calculating instead of feeling. For months since the divorce was final, that bump looks like 6, maybe 7 months. Which means she was pregnant while we were signing papers, smiling politely for attorneys, dividing furniture like it was a math problem. My chest went tight, my ears got hot, and before I could talk myself out of it I was standing in front of her like a shadow she couldn't ignore. She looks up, and the first thing that hits me isn't surprise. It's guilt, the kind that flashes across someone's face before they can put their mask back on. "Ethan," she says, like she's tasting the name. I don't sit. I don't smile. I just point, because in that moment my manners were gone and all I had left was the question. "You were going to tell me. When?" Her hand goes to her belly on instinct, protective, automatic, like she's done it 1,000 times. "Not here," she says, scanning the joggers and tourists like they're microphones. "If you want answers, meet me at Bluebird Cafe on 9th. 15 minutes. Then she stands, moves slow but steady, and walks away like I'm the one who should be chasing to keep up. I stood there staring at the spot she'd been sitting, feeling stupid for thinking the hardest part of my divorce was the divorce. And hearing one ugly thought keep tapping the inside of my skull. If she hid this, what else did I never see? I showed up early, because of course I did. I've been early to everything my whole life. Investor calls, board meetings, our anniversary dinners, even the argument where she told me she was done waiting for me to come home before midnight. Bluebird was warm and crowded, the kind of place that makes you feel like everyone else belongs to a life you missed. I picked a corner table, ordered coffee I didn't taste, and tried not to rehearse speeches in my head like I was preparing for court. When Lila walked in, the whole room noticed her the way people notice a storm that's pretty from a distance. She looked tired, but not fragile, like the tired comes from carrying something real, not from losing sleep to shallow problems. She sits, doesn't waste time, and says it flat, quiet, almost merciful. "The baby isn't yours." I expected relief to hit first. It didn't. What hit first was something worse, like grief with nowhere to land. "Then whose?" I ask, and I hate how my voice sounds, like I'm entitled to an answer just because I used to be her husband. She holds my stare. "That's not the point, Ethan." I let out a laugh that isn't funny. "It's not the point. You're pregnant during our divorce and it's not the point." Her eyes sharpen, and suddenly the room feels smaller. "You want the point. The point is you weren't there. Not in the marriage, not in the hard parts, not in the quiet parts. You were always 2 emails away from leaving the room." That stung because it was true, and because she said it without yelling, like she was tired of performing pain for me. I try to grab onto facts, because facts are safer than feelings. "You were already pregnant when we signed. You let me sign anyway." She nods once. "I found out days before. I sat on our bathroom floor shaking, and you were on a video call pitching growth targets like it was a religion." I swallow, because I remember that week, the way I kept telling her, "Just 1 more quarter." I say, quieter, "You still should have told me." Lila's jaw tightens. "Would it have changed anything? Would you have suddenly remembered how to be a husband, or would you just tried to control the story so it didn't mess up your image?" That's when I realize I'm not the only one who's been calculating. She's been counting every time I chose work over her until the math finally broke her. Then she drops another piece like a stone in my lap. There's something else. The reason we couldn't get pregnant. It wasn't you. My throat closes up, because I carried that blame quietly for years, like a private punishment. She keeps going, voice softer now. I found out I have a genetic issue. It makes pregnancy hard. Almost impossible the normal way. If we'd known earlier, we could have done different testing, different options. I stare at my coffee like it might explain why my life keeps cracking open in public places. Why tell me now? She looks away, and for the first time I see the old Lila, the one who used to rub my shoulder when I pretended I was fine. Because I don't want you hating yourself for something you didn't do. Her phone buzzes. Her expression shifts, worried. She stands. I have to go. I stand too. Lila, don't do that. Don't throw answers at me and disappear. She hesitates, then gives me a detail that feels like a door barely left unlocked. I'm at the Marlowe Hotel, room 814. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., if you want the whole truth. Then she's gone again, leaving me sitting there with my coffee, my ego, and the familiar feeling that I'm losing a battle I didn't know I was fighting. That night I walked into my office without thinking, because the building has always felt like the only place that makes sense. Glass, steel, numbers that behave if you're smart enough. I'm the founder of a finance tech company called Northline, and people love to call me self-made like it's a compliment, like it didn't cost me sleep, friends, and eventually a marriage. My board loves me when I'm ruthless, my staff respects me when I'm steady, and nobody sees how tired I am unless I miss a step. I sat in the dark with the city lit up outside and did what I always do when I'm scared. I opened a spreadsheet. Timeline. Months. Possibilities. Then the thought I didn't want kept pressing in. If the baby isn't mine, Lila was still pregnant while we were married. And if she didn't tell me, it means she didn't trust me with her life anymore. The next day I moved meetings, cancelled a dinner I would normally never cancel, and showed up at the Marlowe like a man walking into his own verdict. Room 814 opened fast, like she'd been waiting behind it. Lila looked different without the cafe crowd around her, hair tied back, no makeup, eyes worn but clear. And the room wasn't romantic, it was practical. Papers on the desk. A laptop open to medical information. A half-eaten bowl of soup on the table. Sit, she says, not unkind, just firm, like she knows I'll try to pace my way out of emotion. I sit. Start from the top, I say. She inhales, then says the sentence that turns my anger sideways. I'm a surrogate. I blink. A what? I'm carrying a baby for someone else. My brain stalls, because I prepared for betrayal, not this. For who? Lila hesitates, and my stomach drops before she even answers. For your sister, Mia. I actually laugh again, sharp and shocked. My sister? The one in London. The one who sends me Christmas cards with pictures of her dog like that's a personality. Lila nods, and it's like the air leaves the room. Mia couldn't carry after her surgeries. She asked me. 8 months ago. My voice cracks, because suddenly I'm not just blindsided, I'm surrounded by secrets. And nobody told me. Not you. Not her. Lila's eyes harden. You didn't exactly make yourself easy to talk to, Ethan. You were already halfway out the door, even if you didn't admit it yet. I want to argue, but the truth is I did start divorce discussions through lawyers before I sat her down, and I still hate that about myself. She continues, slower, like she's handing me glass. I asked Mia not to tell you, because I didn't want you making it a power play. I didn't want you deciding what was best for everyone like you always did. I stare at her. So you just carried my niece inside you while we ended our marriage? Lila's jaw tightens. I carried a baby that would give your sister a family. And yes, I did it while we were ending something else. I look at the laptop, the papers. Why are there medical? The room goes quiet in a way that feels sacred and awful at the same time. My ex-wife is carrying a baby for my sister, and the baby is genetically hers and my brother-in-law's. Meaning Lila will give birth to a child that is, in a real biological way, hers. And then she will hand that child over and walk away like she's made of steel. That's why you're moving, I say, because I suddenly remember something she mentioned in passing months ago about applying to work abroad, something I dismissed like it was a hobby. Lila nods. I got a job offer at a gallery in London. After the birth, I'm leaving. It's easier if I'm near Mia. Easier if I'm not stuck here watching you live the life you chose while I rebuild mine. I want to say something meaningful. I want to apologize in a way that fixes years. Instead, I do what I always do under pressure. I reach for control. You should have told me, I repeat, like a man who thinks repetition is power. Lila shakes her head, voice low. You still don't get it. This wasn't about you. That's what you taught me, Ethan. Everything is always about the company, the optics, the plan. I did something that wasn't about your plan. And right then, like the universe decided I hadn't learned enough in 1 week, Lila's face tightens with pain. Not polite pain. Real pain. She grips the couch cushion, breath catching. Lila. I lean forward. She exhales through her teeth. That's not false labor. Then she freezes, eyes wide, and whispers, my water just broke. Time snaps into a new shape. Suddenly I'm not the CEO, I'm not the ex-husband, I'm just a man in a room with a woman in labor who shouldn't be doing this alone. Okay, I say, steady, because crisis is the only language I've always been fluent in. Hospital. Now. She nods, shaking. Call Mia, she gasps. They need to be there. The lobby of that hotel felt too fancy for real life. Soft lighting, expensive perfume, people moving like nothing in the world ever breaks, and here we were, dragging reality through it. I got her into the car, called my sister with my hands trembling like I was 15 again, and for the first time in years, I didn't care what my calendar said, I didn't care what my board wanted, I didn't care how much money was waiting for me on Monday. All I cared about was getting her there. At the hospital, nurses moved fast, questions flew, signatures appeared, and I watched my sister Mia run in with her husband like someone lit a fire under her. Her face went from confusion to terror to gratitude in 10 seconds when she saw Lila. There was a moment, standing in that hallway, where I realized I'd been calling myself responsible for years while avoiding the one responsibility that mattered. Being present when life is happening. A few hours later, my brother-in-law came out with tears on his cheeks and said, "It's a girl." And the weirdest thing happened. I didn't feel robbed, I didn't feel jealous, I didn't feel like the world owed me something. I felt proud. Not of myself. Of her. Of Lila, exhausted and brave. Of Mia, shaking and happy. Of a family reshaped in a way I didn't control, a way I didn't design, a way I didn't earn with hustle. When Mia offered for me to hold the baby, I almost said no, because I didn't know where I belonged in that room anymore. Then Lila, pale and tired, looked at me and said softly, he should hold her. He's family. Family. That word hit harder than any courtroom document. I held that tiny baby, felt her fingers curl around my thumb, and I looked at Lila and saw her clearly for the first time in years. Not as someone who needed to fit into my schedule, but as someone who kept choosing love even when love hurt. Here's the part that looks like a victory from the outside. I made changes. Real ones. I hired an operations lead so I wasn't running my company like a man trying to outrun his own loneliness. I stopped pretending 70-hour weeks were a personality. I told my board, in plain words, that my life doesn't belong to quarterly reports anymore. And when one of them smirked and said, "Is this a midlife crisis?" I smiled back and said, "No, it's me finally growing up." They didn't like it. I didn't care. Because for the first time, I understood something I should have understood long ago. Success that costs you everyone you love is just a nicer kind of failure. Lila recovered. Mia took the baby home. And a week before Lila flew to London, she agreed to meet me for dinner. Not a romantic dinner, not a let's fix us dinner, just two people sitting across from each other trying to speak like humans instead of old wounds. We laughed, awkward at first, then real, about how I used to set 3 alarms and still run late for anything that didn't have a suit involved. She told me about her gallery job, and I told her I was learning how to be an uncle without treating it like a project plan. When we stood outside the restaurant, rain starting to fall, she looked at me and said, "I don't hate you, Ethan. I just couldn't stay married to your absence." I nodded, because she was right. I wanted to beg. I wanted to promise I'd changed. But I'd already spent years promising and not delivering, and I wasn't going to insult her with another pretty speech. So I just said, "I'm sorry," and for once I let it be small and honest instead of grand and late. Now here's the ending that's going to split people, and I want it to, because I'm genuinely curious what you'd do. Lila left for London. She's near Mia and that little girl who is, in a strange way, part of her forever. And me? I'm back in Portland, running my company differently, living quieter, showing up more. But I still think about one question that doesn't have a clean answer. If you were me, would you fight to rebuild something with the woman you lost, or would you accept that some love is meant to transform, not return? And if you were Lila, would you ever trust a man who only learned to be present after he lost you? Drop your take in the comments, tell me who you think was right, who was wrong, and whether you believe doing something good can justify keeping a secret that big. Because I've learned the hard way, the messiest stories aren't about cheating or money. They're about what people do when they feel unseen.